Oh man, here they come again.
Here they come again. This still has skin on the skull.
By the way, that area, there's 3 points in where my brother lives that I call a triangle area. And there's another little road that has like orbs all the time. There's the orbs at the one road that I talk about that all the teenagers go sit at. And then there's the area that where my brother lives. It's like a triangle almost. Like I literally drew a triangle. Like I did a Google map of the points and I literally drew a triangle. It was like a perfect triangle. But I don't know if that means anything. It's that's just a, oh, by the way.
It's interesting because the triangle aspect of things. People talk about the Bridgewater Triangle, the Bermuda Triangle, the Alaskan Triangle,
All the time.
all these triangles, right? But
Pyramids are triangles.
yeah,
Yeah.
Literally. But it makes you wonder if there's these little smaller areas of triangles that just don't get noticed as much because they're literally geographically smaller areas. So there's less people talking about it, less things typically happening because it's not covering as big of an area. And maybe and if this is a Puckwudgie area that you're talking about, I mean, it's interesting. I find it interesting because Phil talks about the Puckwudgies in the Bridgewater Triangle. Phil came down here and he was talking about the Puckwudgies being more interdimensional beings as well.
Same thing, yeah.
And he had interactions with them here while he was here. And we're not far, technically speaking, in grand scale from there. It just makes me wonder, are they, because I mean, I'm looking at the Wikipedia page and it says that they're found in Delaware, Prince Edward Island, Indiana, Massachusetts. Well, that's what we know of. But if we're moving away from this idea that they these are little creatures that build huts in the middle of the woods and this is where they live kind of thing. If we're going more interdimensional, Tony woo woo route, who's to say that they're not where you're talking about?
I think people have known about these types of things in the woods forever, and that's why they have national forest areas.
I mean, 100%.
I mean, that's what I think is going on.
I'm trying to find the secrets of the Smoky Mountains because I'm telling you, man, there's something that they're hiding in there. I do believe there's pyramids in the Smokies that they're hiding. And
well,
talk to me.
Yeah,
your eyes got big and said, "Well, talk to me." Go.
Well, so like, okay. I know everybody who's listening is probably like, just say about the 33rd parallel. I'm just trying to set the scene. That's all I'm trying to do with stories. And I'll get to it in a minute. I promise. I have a pyramid story. Okay. A couple of them. Okay. That I've been to. So like, my wife's cousin lives in Florida and she dated a guy who his family lived in South Carolina too. And she came to visit one night and she was driving late at night with him. He was sleeping so I was at their house for Thanksgiving and I was telling her uncle about it. And as I was telling him the story, she come busting out and she's like, "Brad, I got to tell you, like, and I was like, I was just telling your uncle about this. And she said she saw the same thing. She saw a Puckwudgie. Well, she didn't describe it as a Puckwudgie. She said this thing was like scooting across the road where it's like legs go forward like a dog, almost how a dog runs.
Yeah.
She said it was like this little thing and had long hair and it just was like scooting across, like running across the road, like didn't look like anything that was like a dog. I'm describing a dog because that's what the reference she has is. But it was like scurrying across the road as if it didn't want anybody to see it or whatever. So that was a second Puckwudgie, like sound like a Puckwudgie in South Carolina. So there might be more. And people who listen to this might go, well, now that I think about it, that troll might have been a Puckwudgie. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So, but anyways, there's tons of stories about my area. I got cousins, family members. That's why I started the podcast, because there are a lot of these people are going to come on my podcast and talk about similar things. It's not going to be exactly like yours where it's focused on that, you know what I mean, all the time. But because I think all these things kind of interconnect. We talked about, I talked about how God is light and these things, there's a lot of light aspects to them. I'm not saying they're God, but I'm saying that there are things coming through that are coming through as light. And that's the best way to describe them. When you see them, most of the time, when people the first form they see, and this is every story just about of UFOs or Bigfoot, they saw a little ball first and it was floating around and then it turned into something. So that's how they describe it.
Yeah.
I've never seen that myself, but I watch a lot of this stuff. I listen to a lot of it. So I mentioned some things I just got loud. I didn't mean to get loud on
There you
my. I mentioned some things that happened to me and my brothers and my dad about hearing the ghost horse. But what happened to me one night, I had a dream, and I don't take stock in dreams a lot because it's just like, what is it? We don't know, But I had this dream that kind of stood out one night, and I live an hour away from where I grew up, and I had this dream that I was in the woods where I grew up, and I looked up in the sky, and these two giant balls like suns were in the sky at the same time, and then they came down, and then they like backed me into a house, and they told me, I said, "Who are y'all?" And they go, "We're the old flock. We're the protectors of this world." And I was like, what does that mean? And then it was like, that's all I can really remember. But I remember specifically them kind of turning into, I guess, people. I mean, how when you dream, you just see faces, like shapes, you don't really see
detail.
Yeah. And they backed me into a house that appeared out of nowhere in the middle of the woods. But it was interesting to me because they said they were the old flock, and the flock makes me think of, like, for some reason, a flock of angels or something. I don't know what I would call it, but so that happened to me. In our area, we have a lot of people who have died. I've lost 4 of my best friends from childhood to crazy deaths, and that just scratches the surface. There's like crazy, like I've had ex-girlfriends die. I've had friends and cousins and family members that have just died. The whole area is just like this weird energy suck or something. You know what I mean? Like, and I just talked about this on the first episode I filmed, my buddy Mark, because he brought that up. He's like, it's absurd how many people we know die. And I go, I know. And my wife just lost 3 people but she had her great grandma was like 96 when she died. Like, people don't lose family members and friends as frequently as we did. I was in the military, and people are always like, "Oh, did you lose friends?" I'm like, "Yeah, at home. Like, I lost way more friends at home than I did in the military." Wow. So the whole area just seems to have some like energy, some either good or bad energy. I don't really know what it is.
It's like an energy vortex.
Maybe. Yeah. It just feels like there's something there to it. There's a thing called the boo hag in Charleston. I don't know if you've ever heard of hag.
Hag, yeah.
Yeah, the hag. They call it the boo hag in the Gullah community. It's a, I think you had a couple of guests that talked about this thing paralyzing. Like, basically what they say this thing does is like hold you down and sleep with you. Like, basically rapes you or something like that. And so it's kind of a joke. It's like, don't let the hag get you. Don't let the boo hag get you. That's another. Unless
that's your thing.
Yeah, unless you're really into that. Like scary movie, mask, bag on them. So like, that's in the same area. Same. And if you read the National UFO Reporting Center, there's countless stories from that same area. So there's a lot of stuff there. So that starts, let's just say Charleston starts the 33rd parallel in the US, because it does, right? It's right on the coast.
Okay.
Let's move across the 33rd parallel to a place called Lake City. Lake City has this giant cross and it's a 100-foot cross.
It's Lake City?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's called Lake City.
South Carolina?
Yeah.
Okay.
So like there's a giant cross there that is on the 33rd parallel that actually, if you drive down the 33rd parallel across the United States, you'll find them everywhere. And every time you see one, it's on the 33rd parallel. And it's like, as soon as I see them, they look exactly the same. I think I sent you some pictures of it one time, but they look exactly as the same.
I've seen these.
Yeah. So like, but you keep driving, and it's like, as soon as you see one, you're like, oh, it must be on the 33rd again. And it's like, yeah, every time you do a Google check or something, that's the case. So that's another thing that I noticed. There's another story. I'll go back to the town I live in currently. There was a broken arrow. A broken arrow is an atomic bomb that fell out of a plane. Essentially, it wasn't lost. It fell out of a plane. I shouldn't call it a broken arrow.
That's what they call it?
Yeah, a broken arrow is an atomic bomb that falls, it doesn't detonate or doesn't.
And there was one here that did that.
Oh, in here? Really?
Well, in the country, I know.
It's 5 miles away from where I live now.
Really?
Yeah. So like, it's literally.
That's terrifying.
Yeah, I know, dude. So, but there's all kind of official stories, but that's just another weird thing. If you go about 30 minutes away, there's a town called Bishopville, and Bishopville is very popular because everybody comes from around the world to go to Bishopville because it's a very popular sighting of this thing called the Lizard Man. Again, the Lizard Man is another cryptid that happens on that 33rd parallel. And again, we're just starting the journey of the 33rd parallel, but there are, there's cities underneath. There's a place called Columbia, which is the capital of South Carolina. There's a lake there, and there's a city that's underneath the water. It's about 200 feet deep, which I find odd. But people who, I guess, do hydroelectricity and stuff, they just like, we just, they flooded the towns because of, put power in it. But I'm like, this 200 feet deep. To me, it doesn't really make any sense. How is it 200 feet deep and all these other houses are on level? Like, there's no mountains or anything. Columbia, this mountain range, I guess, ends in that area. And so it's like, we don't get mountains, but it's like the tail end of it. But all of the lakes in South Carolina, just 3 of them have cities underneath them, or towns, old towns. And people go scuba diving down there to look at them and stuff. There's old bridges and buildings and stuff you can go look at. So it's a very interesting place. But are
they towns that are like, they were established by colonizers, or
I mean, they're just, some of them say like 1905.
Okay, so it's not like they're saying they're hundreds of years old.
They're like kind of recent. In the town I live in town I live in now, I went to the library because I was like, maybe there's some old buildings and stuff here that were like, and sure enough, there was a bunch of buildings that were like these old Capitol buildings and these old cathedrals and beautiful buildings that were just torn down for parking lots and things like that, which is another odd. I don't know why I mentioned it. I just figured I'd throw that in there. But if you keep going across the 33rd, you get to like in Georgia, the Georgia Guidestones, right?
They're on the 33rd?
Yeah, well, it's like the 34.0. It's like, that's what I'm saying. It's
barely
It's right on the edge. So like, I don't know.
Stinking contractors just mismeasured just a little bit.
I go back to Charleston. So the 33rd degree Freemason Scottish Rite is headquartered in Charleston.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. So
okay.
Like, again, 33rd parallel.
Yeah.
So like all this stuff, like, you start to kind of connect the dots with like, but no, I'm not saying that Freemasons have anything to do with that. Like maybe it's just coincidence, but it's just odd that it's the 33rd degree Freemason and it's on the 33rd degree parallel of the state, or that runs across the state. So if you go across through Georgia, Atlanta, again, I mentioned Atlanta earlier because I think Atlanta is because of the 33rd. Let me go back and try to describe what I think the 33rd parallel is. I think it's a ley line. So a ley line is essentially it's an electromagnetic field in a particular area of Earth that the field causes like high levels of electromagnetic radiation, right? So so electromagnetic radiation, I'll just go into it real quick, is a form of energy that propagates as electrical and magnetic waves. Okay, so it's essentially, if you think about wavelengths that are going, they constantly butt up to each other. That's what the electrical and magnetic waves do. They touch each other, right? Well, on these ley lines, they're separated a little bit. They don't quite touch. There's a higher magnetic field and a lower electric field. So I think that there's a lot of energy coming through these areas.
Yeah.
Okay. In these ley lines. And I don't think ley lines are specific. Like, I think maybe it's just a coincidence that there's a ley line all the way down the same line. Maybe it's a coincidence, but I think there's little pockets, like you said, of like areas that are highly electromagnetic, or like have a field. Like, so what I just described with the electromagnetic field separating, like if you think about it, that creates a little time slip, creates a little gap. If the electromagnetic field is what holds us together, that creates a little wormhole or portal or something. And so I think energies can come through freely is how I see it. But if you go through Atlanta, again, Atlanta's the new Hollywood. A lot of people don't know that. Everything's all the Marvel movies, and they're not all of them probably, but a lot of them. Walking Dead, a bunch of stuff is filmed in Atlanta, and I think that goes into frequencies. Like if you want to cross into the Isaac world, right? It goes into like projecting. People call it was it predictive programming? I think they're actually trying to manifest something on these lines. That's what I think is happening.